What price would you be willing to pay for legacy? How much of yourself would you be willing to sacrifice? How many people would you be willing to lose? Let's explore the psychology behind the breaking of a friendship, the senselessness of civil war, a story of pride and despair told through the subversive music which underpins its dark and somber narrative. This is the music theory behind the Banshees of Inisherin, how to convey story through meter. The film is set in the 1920s on a remote island off the coast of Ireland, Inisherin. Inisherin is a fiction, of course. No such island actually exists. The name probably stems from a culmination of three real-life islands: Inishmore, Inisheer, and Inishmaan. When put together, Inisherin in Gaeilge means Island of Ireland. A name cleverly chosen, because in so many ways, what happens on the island of Inisherin can be read as an allegory to Ireland's troubled past. Inisherin might not be real, but the story that director and playwright Martin McDonagh tells is one as old as time.
But you didn't say anything to me. You didn't do anything to me.
Well, that's what I was thinking, like.
I just don't like you no more.
You do like me.
I don't.
You liked me yesterday.
The story centers around two lifelong friends and follows the chain reaction that's set off by a sudden rejection. Amateur fiddler Colm Doherty has come to realize that his old drinking buddy, Pádraig Sulivan, is just too dull for him. Colm says that he would rather spend the rest of his time composing, something he hopes to be remembered for.
I just have this tremendous sense of time slipping away in me, Pádraig.
He's afraid that his life has amounted to nothing and that he has nothing to show for it, no legacy to leave behind.
So we'll keep aimlessly chatting and my life will keep dwindling, and in 12 years I'll die with nothing to show for it, bar the chats I've had with a limited man. Is that it?
In order to achieve greatness, he's come to the realization that he must cut out from his life all which is not so great. Pádraig, who is seemingly too dull to comprehend this, is of course devastated with this sudden, unprovoked rejection. He refuses, or maybe more truthfully stated, is unable to accept it.
So will I be calling for you on my way to the pub later? I will, so.
And makes multiple attempts at reconciliation until Colm gives Pádraig a drastic ultimatum.
I have a set of shears at home, and each time you bother me from this day on, I'll take those shears and I'll take one of my fingers off with them, and I'll give that finger to you, a finger from my left hand, my fiddle hand. And each day you bother me more, another I'll take off and I'll give you, until you see sense enough to stop, or until I have no fingers left. Does this make things clearer to you?
Not really, no.
The Banshees of Inisherin is in so many ways a very Irish movie, which makes the choice to open the film with a Bulgarian folk song all the more striking. Polyrhythms et Dora. This ethereal choral arrangement was first recorded by the Bulgarian state female vocal choir by ethnomusicologist Marcel Sellier in the late 1950s. Re-released as a compilation in 1975, the album was a commercial failure until Peter Murphy of the band Bauhaus took a bootlegged cassette copy to his record producer, who then licensed and re-released the album to worldwide acclaim in the 1980s. Eventually, this album would hit the ear of Martin McDonagh, who used Polygynala et Dora as a temp track in an early cut of the movie. The music stuck, and it actually made it to the final version of the film. But it doesn't feel tacked on, as so many temp tracks tend to. It feels intentional. The all-female choir gives a fitting voice to the film's namesake. Banshees in Irish folklore are female spirits, heralds of death who foretell the passing of a family member with blood-curdling screams in the dead of night. The fact that banshees only appear where family is concerned is telling. Inisherin is incredibly remote. Everyone's lives are so intermingled that, in a way, they're all one big family. Mrs. McCormick, the island's resident crazy lady, embodies the role of the banshee in her given prophecy.
A death shall come to Inisherin afore the month is out.
A death, huh?
Maybe even 2 deaths.
A prophecy which is foretold in the music itself. The harmonies are voiced close, effortlessly swaying from a D-flat major to an E-flat minor sound in a characteristically Balkan vocal slide. Bulgarian vocal harmonies tend to be complex to a Western ear. Dense vocal harmonies, often drifting into the microtonal, they can at times feel blissful and calming, and at other times foreboding. We hear the lighter side of these harmonies open the film, accompanied by lush, wide-angle establishing shots that reveal the beauty of the island's cliffside. These ethereal folk harmonies give us an important sense of the simple but nice life that these characters lead. But there's something buried deep into the very DNA of this music, which gives us the hint that something is not quite right. Polygynala et Tudora tells the story of a girl who wars against nature. Roughly translated, the lyrics read, Theodora falls asleep beneath an olive tree. She is suddenly awakened when a mountain breeze breaks a branch off the tree. She reproaches the wind for disturbing her lovely dream. Little breeze blowing so restlessly, why do you flow here now? I was dreaming that my sweetheart came to see me and brought me flowers and a golden ring. Theodora, just like so many we come to know on Inisherin, is stuck, dreaming of a better future for herself, but is interrupted by circumstances in which she has no control over. You can no more outrun the wind than you can escape the only life you know on a remote Irish island in the 1920s. Inisherin is plain and beautiful on the surface, but we must look deeper into the interwoven complexity of the rhythm to understand the whole truth of it. The song is felt in 11/16, which is not atypical for Balkan folk music, but it might feel a little out of place in a setting like Inisherin. The Bulgarian music theory perspective might call this meter kopanica or gonkino, after the dances in which these time signatures tend to be associated with. Bulgarian dance music is often examined by theorists for its off-kilter feeling because of how the subdivisions are felt. In kopanica, 11/16 is felt in groupings like this. As music intended for dance, the Balkan theory perspective might understand this form instead as varying segments of long and short time blocks. This off-kilter vibe through the use of odd time signatures is a theme that's weaved throughout the entire soundtrack and gives us a subtle hint that at the core of things, something in this story has gone terribly unstable.
He asked if I had any thoughts about the score and what the score would be, and I said, well, it's about 2 Irishmen on an island off the coast of Ireland during the Irish Civil War. Is there any reason why the music wouldn't be a little Irish? And he said, oh, I hate that idea. No, I hate old world, deedle-dee Irish film music. It's just really really got a very strong response from him.
The musical portrait composer Carter Burwell paints through the rest of the film is one of few colors. A sparse instrumentation comprising mostly of harp, celeste, and marimba pairs well with the story's small scale, no doubt a compliment to McDonough's background in playwriting. This is a refreshing contrast to the constant onslaught of in-your-face, high-budget CGI visuals and bombastic sub-bass drop soundtracks that much of the modern film industry likes to cram down our throats. The music never gets overly emotional, and because of that, it never tells you explicitly how to feel. This is because Carter Burwell understands that there's power in subtlety.
What actually brought it home for me was I was halfway into writing the score, and one day I was reading to my daughter, who's 11, reading Grimm's fairy tales, and we're reading Cinderella. And in the Grimm's telling of the story, the evil stepmother has her daughters cut off parts of their feet to fit into the slipper. And I was reading that to her and thinking, well, that reminds me of another story I know about some fingers. And I began to think, well, that is what the music is doing. I'm turning it into a fable.
The decidedly non-Irish direction of the score makes the film feel more like a cautionary tale or a fable, something that elevates this story to the mythical. The playful, childlike nature of the Celeste captures Páric's naivete, while the main theme's modal stylings of Phrygian ambiguity speaks to the depths of Colm's despair. Here we can observe, once again, a subtle shift into an odd meter, throwing off the stability from the expected ebb and flow of the music in a way that just tips off the senses that something isn't quite right. We hear this same theme throughout the entire film, but each time we hear it, it gets a little more somber. This is achieved, of course, through orchestration, but also through tempo. Notice how this early iteration of the theme contrasts in pace with this later reduction of the same theme. These reductive variations on this motif continue until finally near the end of the last act, when in the story all seems the most dim, we hear the theme once again, this time dropped an octave on the harp, slowed even further, accompanied by just a single drone in the high strings, which gives voice to the tension that has been building between our two characters, a tension ready to be broken. On the surface, the theme is light, largely due to its orchestration. Carter Burwell once joked that it's impossible to make a sad melody on a marimba. But if you look past the timbre of the instruments and the orchestration, you'll hear a very strong Phrygian sound, a mode largely considered to be amongst the darkest, wrapped in an ambiguity of rhythm which foreshadows the impending violence to come. Hints of Indonesian gamelan are also spread throughout the soundtrack, further subverting expectations and layering nuanced dissonance wherever called for. Deep, low tones from bells and gongs come and go. Something grumbles in the dark, a quiet, senseless madness that you can't quite place bubbles to the surface. So why does Colm threaten to and eventually cut off all the fingers on what he considers to be his fiddle hand? It kind of seems like a counterintuitive thing for an aspiring musician to do.
I'll see he doesn't talk to you no more.
Do. Else it'll be all four of them the next time, not just the one.
You're not serious. But that won't help your feckin' music.
Aye. We're getting somewhere now.
I think you might be ill, Colm.
Do worry sometimes that I'm just entertaining myself while I stave off the inevitable. Don't you?
No, I don't.
Yeah, you do.
We're getting somewhere now. To understand what Colm is getting at, let's look into the music he writes throughout the film. When we're first introduced to Colm's tune, it's unfinished. It's nothing special yet. Played with an almost hesitant articulation, it doesn't really go anywhere. And as Pádraig says,
I'll take my pint outside because it's a shite tune anyways. I wouldn't bother with it.
it isn't until Colm follows through on his threat and removes one of his fingers that the piece starts to get interesting and evolves into something a little more memorable. The tune takes the rhythmic form known as a jig, or I guess a double jig would probably be more accurate. It's felt in 12/8 time. The emphasis here rests in the first two dotted quarter notes that open each measure, almost like a call and response, antecedent and consequent phrase. We're struck twice with a confident, stable dyad, a perfect fifth, articulated through double stops, followed by a short phrase which quickly resolves into a repetition in the following measure. The tune starts to develop a certain confidence to it. It's driving towards something now, and it's more sure of itself than it was before. But just like our Bulgarian folk song or our main motif, there's something in the rhythm which gives away the truth Colm refuses to acknowledge. You see, the tune is mostly in 12/8. It has a kind of hiccup in it right here, a single bar of 3/8, which breaks up the figure's otherwise regular pulse. It lags and hobbles, trying to project strength and grandeur in its consonant, strong, stable harmony, but is unable to do so because of the instability in its foundation. The dissonance is in the meter. Colm thinks that by cutting out his friend, he's cutting out his despair. He blames Pádraig for his own ineptitude and is unable and unwilling to look into himself to see the truth of things. His pride gets the better of him, and only through an act of self-mutilation does he see his music progress. Colm's burden lightens for a time, but it's not enough. You see, Pádraig won't just let go of his friend. No, he has too much of his own pride, which he can't let go of. To accept Colm's rejection is to accept that he himself really is dull. This fear of Pádraig's is shown in many ways throughout the film. From his constant need of approval from his sister Siobhan and his pubmates, to his entire friendship with Dominic, a character Pádraig only seems to hang around with to feel like he's not the dumbest person on Inisherin. Pádraig is nice, simple, but not necessarily by choice. He's afraid that he couldn't be more even if he wanted to. He can't accept being the dullest person in the room. Colm, by contrast, is damned by his ambition. He's a thinking man, but he's afraid that he's not good enough to make it as one of the greats, so he takes drastic steps to ensure that he never has a chance to become one. Neither Colm nor Pádraig can get over their pride. Colm eventually finishes his tune, He calls it the Banshees of Inisherin. But as he soon realizes, there's no solace to be found in empty success.
Maybe they're banshees too. I just don't think that they scream to portend death anymore. I think they just sit back, amused, and observe.
His despair returns, but as prideful as he is, he doubles down. Shortly after the final unwanted visit from Parig, Colm removes all of the fingers from his hand. The next time we hear the Banshees of Inisherin, it's at a trad session in this pub. The tune is as prideful as ever, now accompanied by a baron, a traditional Irish drum, and a few fiddles. Colm pays no mind to his pain as he conducts the group. We are given a close-up of the blood-stained table and his mangled hand, which begs the question, was it all worth it? There's a sickness on Inisherin that will be immediately familiar to anyone who grew up in a small town or a remote place. Hopelessness, bleak prospects, a sense that in a lot of ways, you can't escape the small life you've been born into, no matter how far you run. It starts with Colm, who is desperate to leave something behind that matters because he's afraid of being forgotten. His desperation for legacy eventually leads him to self-mutilation. Siobhan, Parik's sister, who, despite thinking Colm mad, deeply understands his despair. She also sees no future for herself on Inisherin and is the only one in the story to make it off the island. Dominic, whose father regularly abuses him, who's treated by everyone like the village idiot, sees his one and only friend, a paragon of niceness, and the only person he looks up to for light be consumed by darkness. His despair, unspoken, leads him to take his own life. And in the end, Parig, the unwavering optimist, watches his life cave in around him as one by one he loses every single person that he loves. A man with no one left, not even his favorite donkey, corrupts and betrays himself.
Your fat fingers killed me little donkey today. So no, we won't call it quits. We'll call it the start.
You're joking me.
Yeah, no, I'm not joking, yeah. So tomorrow, Sunday, God's Day, around 2, I'm going to call up to your house and I'm going to set fire to it and hopefully you'll still be inside it. But I won't be checking either way. Just be sure and leave your dog outside. I've nothing against that gum. Or you can do whatever's in your power to stop me. To our graves we're taking this. To one of our graves anyways.
There's another way this movie can be read, which is as an allegory to the Irish Civil War. I won't dive too much into this. Sociocinema has an impeccable analysis from this perspective that I point you to if you want to hear more, but I will say this. The Banshees of Inisherin captures a certain senselessness in its writing and its music, which I think speaks to the nature of civil war. Brother against brother, friend against friend. If you find it hard to understand why someone would just suddenly cut you off after a lifetime of what seems to be a healthy friendship, I think you understand the point. Because at its core, civil war, whether literal or metaphorical, whether with your brother or your friend or an internal affair, is not something that can be understood.
I killed a miniature donkey. It was by accident, but I do feel bad about it.
Do you think God gives a damn about miniature donkeys, Colm?
I fear he doesn't. And I fear that's where it's all gone wrong.
And self-mutilation is a sin. It's one of the biggest.
Is it? Self-mutilation, so. You have me there, multiplied by 5.
How's the despair?
It's back a bit.
But you're not gonna do anything about it.
I'm not going to do anything about it. No.
Colm in this scene is not just talking about cutting off his fingers. He's talking about how civil war itself is an act of self-mutilation that costs both sides the legacy they so desperately tried to leave. In the end, we are left with Pádraig and Colm on the beach of Inisherin. Both men have changed. In a way, their roles have reversed from the start. Colm seeks peace between the two, something Pádraig now finds impossible.
Haven't had any rifle fire from the mainland in a day or two. I think they're coming to the end of it.
I'm sure they'll be at it again soon enough, aren't you? Some things there's no moving on from. And I think that's a good thing.
Colm is now left by himself, the Banshee bisecting him and the friend he once knew. He looks out across the ocean of Inisherin to the mainland, to Ireland and all of its troubles. For the last time, Colm hums his tune, the Banshees of Inisherin, a song once so confident, now quiet with regret. The melody is drowned out by the roaring sea that will forever surround the island of Inisherin, a place whose psychological sickness promises to silence all who betray themselves and their friends in search of meaning. Huge thank you to all my patrons now on screen for supporting me and making this video possible. If you'd like to connect with me or support my work, please head over to my Patreon page in the link in the description. This video might be a little off-brand for me, although maybe not, I guess. I have done a few movie music theory shorts, but never really anything this long. Anyways, this video is deliberately less technically dense on the theory side than my normal stuff. Not exactly sure if that's a good thing or not, so if you enjoyed it, definitely let me know in the comments below. And if you're new here and you've somehow made it this far, I'd say you're pretty invested, so why not hit that subscribe button for more music theory and analysis videos.